Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle. This is Auditing with Autism. I'm really glad to see you here today because I have an excellent topic for us to discuss today. And it's a book report. I think every once in a while I'm going to single out a book and do an official book report episode. That's what I think this will be. Last week I read a book called Autism Feels by Orion Kelly, and it's now in my top 10 favorite books. I think everybody who knows an autistic person or has autism or wants to learn about autism should please buy this book right here. It's so good that, I'm making an episode about it and wanted to talk a little bit about it. It officially made the list. I just wanted to show you it's on the list with all the other good ones, and I put a star by it because it's in the top 10. I don't want to break any copyright laws. I made a joke. Before I made a joke on another stream, another channel, where I said I would read the book online, which was totally not true. It's a joke. I would never do that to somebody's product. But joking about it seemed appropriate or something. But so I won't even quote the book for fear of offending and the copyright law. But I wanted to. There was one box. There's so many funny points in his book. First of all, the book is so funny. And it is so filled with information about autism. And Orion Kelly is a person who has dedicated his life, his time, to researching the topic of autism, which, if you know anybody who has it, or if if you're interested in the topic, it's priceless. It's really important to get this information, and it's not easy to find it everywhere. So he put a lot of good information in the book. And, like, for example, one of the things that stands out big time for me is the idea that 80% of autistic people are unemployed. That's 8 out of 10 people who are autistic are not employed, or they're underemployed. And that seems like a tragedy, considering all that we have to offer. And he talks about all that we do have to offer. And it's so good that it even made me realize that there's things that I didn't even think about that autistic people have to offer. For sure, the big ones are, loyalty and honesty and, sincerity and authenticity and things like this, which, ironically, or maybe worse than that, it seems like a lot of people in the regular world, in the neurotypical world, the majority of people don't seem to appreciate a lot of these qualities that I just mentioned, even though they say they do. And that's another issue for autistic people, is hypocrisy. We will see if somebody's being honest or authentic, and if they're not, we really will notice or even point it out. There's so many great points in the book, and so I didn't want to copyright or quote anything, but there was a box. He has every 20 or 30 pages, he'll have these boxes that have just, you'll be reading words down a page, and then suddenly there's an insert, a box with a different color, and it's literally the shape of a rectangle. And or a box, and he'll have a little joke in there, or a thought about something that's sort of funny, but usually is true, and it's a good point. Well, in this one, it wasn't so much funny, but it was such a good point that I wanted to bring it up because it hit home for me, and I thought maybe it would hit home for other people who have autism. or are autistic, and specifically parents. If you have kids that are autistic and you're looking for some good advice, please read this book. This is the book to read, because, for example, he points out that he thought it was shocking to hear from the medical field that they are saying things like, just go ahead and let your child cry himself to sleep. Don't soothe them, and like never let your child sleep with you, or stay with your child while they're going to sleep. Like there's there is a philosophy of child rearing that says don't pick up your child if it's crying, as a way to teach your child some lesson that I'm not quite sure what that lesson is, because it doesn't seem logical to not pick up a child that's crying. I mean, the child is a child, so it's crying because of sincere reasons. The child's too young to have any manipulative reasons for crying. So if the child's crying, you want to understand, you want to pick it up and learn about the child and why it's crying. And oftentimes what I've discovered with my own kid is that that's all the child wants. It may not really have an issue. It just wants the attention because that's what it wants. And you can see when a child is needing to change a diaper. You can see when a child is crying or hear a child crying, but you can't always see or hear or smell when a child needs attention. And so it's important to keep it in mind that, there's other reasons why a child may cry. And so I was so happy to see when Orion put that in as a special note in his book, because it was so important to me and the way we raised our kid. Um, because of that philosophy, I wanted to mention there's a doctor who's famous for writing books about child rearing. All through the 20th century, he was famous. This person was so famous, he ran for president in the 70s. His name is Dr. Spock. You've probably heard of Dr. Spock. And if not, you've for sure heard of Spock on Star Trek. And I have to, I don't, I haven't really learned the story, but I'm sure there's a connection between the name Spock in Star Trek and Dr. Spock, who was writing books, right before um, Roddenberry wrote Star Trek and these books. But so anyway, Dr. Spock, he had a new approach to child rearing. And this is back in I guess, the 20s and 30s, maybe the 40s, when he was really getting into writing his books. And then, as I mentioned, when he was older, he ran for president in the 70s. But Dr. Spock says, he quotes himself, he's been quoted as saying, quote, "We understand that it's no longer optimal or even appropriate to dictate to people what to do," unquote. And he's talking about the people being the baby, even. He's telling parents to not dictate what and tell your baby what to do, but to listen to the baby, have a relationship with the baby where the baby, will get trust in that relationship and won't be told what to do, but will be listened to. And that seemed like such an important idea that I wanted to bring it up and talk about it. Well, in the book, again, oh, this book was so good. This book is the book you want to read if you, like I said, have autism, are autistic, know anybody who's autistic, want to know more about autism. This is the one, and it will certainly get you on your way if you want more technical information. He even shows you where to go for that. But I love the book because it's like hanging out with Orion. If you've ever watched him on YouTube or listened to his podcasts, he's really interesting and funny and smart. And so it's fun and easy to listen to him, and to hang out. So when you're reading his book, it's like you're doing that, he's talking to you through the book. So you get that joy of just hanging out with Orion for, many dozens of hours or however long it takes you to read the book. Well, in the book, some highlights that I really liked. The biggest one, I got to just start off because I keep burying the lead. I noticed my problem. The best part for me in the book was the relationship advice. Man, oh man. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But really quick, I just wanted to mention that he says in Australia, they have something there called it's technically called the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Lanyard that you wear scheme. Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Lanyard scheme to quietly tell staff that the person's wearing that, that it's basically you wear it at an airport, especially if you're a child or, like I would wear it with my disability, with my autism. I would wear this lanyard. I would go into an airport, and that lanyard would be my tell-all to the staff at the airport, or really anybody who knew what it meant, but specifically the staff who's supposed to be on the lookout for it. It will tell them that I'm disabled and that they, have to be mindful in supporting me in my disability without me having to tell them about my disability. And I think that is such a good idea. I really think that is so good that I wish it was a law yesterday everywhere in the world, especially where I am, I, by the way, yeah, the heat picked up, summer finally hit. It's in the 80s now. I was making a fire just a few days ago, it seems like. Anyway, we had a long spring. But the idea of telling others that you have a disability without having to tell them you have a disability is something that I've been thinking about a lot before I even was diagnosed with autism, because I learned that if I have a disability with hearing aids, my hearing. So I wear hearing aids, but sometimes, a lot of the times, my hearing aids don't effectively work for me in a lot of situations, They were perfect in a school environment, but in just about every other environment, they don't really work for me. They're too loud. I have to pull them out. I don't want to wear them. They're too loud. Um, but I want people to know that I have a hearing disability when I go in public. It helps me if they know that. So what I started doing was I would just wear my hearing aids without turning them on. And I would even, I would get the older model. Like I had the first hearing aid I ever bought, was so big you could for sure see it, and the new ones you can barely see them. So I would put the older models in my ear so people could see that I was hearing disabled. And it maybe it was just my own peace of mind, but it seemed like it helped. It seemed like people would see the hearing aids and they would they would act accordingly a little bit. They would just be a little bit more mindful. People are not mindful. I mean, there's so many times that I told people that I had a hearing disability and showed them my hearing aid, even, and they said, oh, okay, sure. And then immediately continued to talk in quiet tones, or in the same way that I was having trouble hearing them. So it's like, even when they know the difference, sometimes they'll increase their voice loud for a second and then go back to a quieter tone. It's just it's incredibly surprising how hard it is for people to be mindful of themselves for other people. It's a little disappointing, but I get it. It's a practice, and if you're not thinking about it all the time, or maybe a disability makes a person nervous, and so they become uncomfortable in working with you in your disability. So my point is this lanyard scheme, the sunflower idea, the sunflower lanyard scheme at airports seems like um, a really good idea. You know, it seems like it's sharing love and care for the public, the citizens, the people of Australia. And I wish we had a little bit more of that over here. But the main takeaway for me in the book by far was in the second half of the book where he was talking about his relationships, specifically his relationships with his family and his wife. And it was really a treat to see, you know, his wife Renee writing her own words in the book and talking about her experiences as a neurotypical person involved with a relationship with a neurodivergent husband. Really good writing, good information. And I wish it was, you know, I wish I had read this book when I was in my relationship still with my wife. There's a lot of, not regret. I mean, I didn't know, but if I could have had the diagnosis of knowing that I had this disability, of knowing that I was autistic, and had the relationship advice of what you know was in the book, and even some of the ideas that Orion and his wife do for each other, how they communicate to each other. There's so many different ways that a person with autism can be supported without bugging their partner, and a lot of different ways that a partner can also be supported, even if they are in a relationship with a neurodivergent person. And I could, you know, I don't want to get too personal. I'm trying to think about how not to get too personal in my own story, but I guess the gist of it is that knowledge is power, and if I could have been more mindful and had a little bit more information about what was going on with my own disability, I know I could have put in a better effort for sure. And you know, it makes me think of the selfishness that I probably pretty sure I had. You know, I was wanting things to, you know, with my autism, I think I needed to have things a certain way to feel okay in the world. Pretty sure that's true. And I wasn't, you know, like I said in other videos, I have a strong personality, and I wasn't willing to let things go. I definitely was unable to be a diplomat as well as I could have. And I think with the information of, you know, that I read in the book, Autism Feels, I would have had a better foundation for making wiser choices. You know, I didn't feel like my partner was making concessions for me that I felt like were life or death. You know, like so important to me that it felt like it was life or death. And that started to erode our relationship when I didn't feel like my partner was willing to understand, or you know, even if they didn't understand, willing to work with me. And so, you know, it started to hurt the relationship. You know, I had to choose on whether or not I wanted to let it go and not get that care, or if I was willing to, you know, get the care and maybe lose the relationship. Well, you don't need to do either one. You can have the care and the relationship when you have the knowledge of what's going on. It just seems so clear. We were pretty young, you know, too. So there's a lot of different ways your personality shows itself when you're a younger person, for sure. But we were both mature and we wanted to make it work, you know, and so we were having trouble. We were struggling, and we didn't exactly understand why. And I for sure felt a lot of guilt about the whys, knowing how I am. And even before I met her, I had all the fears that I also read in the book. Maybe it's a standard fear for autistic people, but fears of losing my relationship, fears of missing out, and other things. But anyway, the good thing that I wanted to share is that this book has enough information that I think anybody who's in a younger relationship definitely wouldn't have any trouble. And after I've read the book, you know, I'm not going to have any more trouble. It's going to be a lot easier to talk to people about my disability and ask for help with it, and to have people understand what's going on with it. You know, so that was my big share, was the chapters on relationship and the information that I learned about how to improve my interpersonal relationship with my partner. And it feels good. I mean, even though that relationship is over, having the knowledge now feels good. It gives me confidence. There were a couple other things that I just really quickly wanted to mention, which was that Orion mentions his sensitivity to smells, and I also have a sensitivity to smells. I really enjoy smells, but some smells I don't. But usually I enjoy them. But there were some smells that were too strong that I didn't like. That changed after I had COVID, and I got COVID a couple years ago, and I got really sad because I lost my sense of smell. And so I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to have smell anymore. And it's such an important part of who I am, smell. And so I got sad. But then a couple weeks later, it came back. And with that smell coming back, I realized no smells bothered me anymore. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. And then one last quick story about being autistic as a young child. When I was 5 or 6, my dad would go to work, and I would I'd be taken to like a daycare. And this daycare, it was summertime, I guess. It was hot enough to have kiddie pools. And there were two kiddie pools, the kind of pools that are like, I don't know, 4 feet diameter. But there were two of them because the people that ran the daycare were so good. I loved them for what they did. They said there's one kiddie pool for splash and the other kiddie pool is for quiet. And I was the only kid that ever sat in the quiet kiddie pool and never wanted to go into the splash pool. And every other kid wanted to go into the splash pool, even though it was just the same little 4 foot diameter, barely enough room just to lay down, even though you're 6. And they yet still wanted to be in that pool, splash, make a lot of noise and stuff. And that was one of the first times that I realized that I'm different than all these other kids. And I realized, how much I loved this adult who had given me a choice between two pools, where, as Orion points out, if they would have offered me just one choice of one pool, I probably wouldn't have even stuck my foot in the water. But because I had the choice, I got to pick, and and then I enjoyed it a lot. And I'll never forget that experience. The care of the adult, the noticing that I'm different, and the reason why, wanting the quiet solitude versus the other kids who wanted to get each other wet and splash and be really loud. You know? So, oh, and there was this one last story I wanted to bring up about my spelling. When I was learning how to read and learning how to spell, I was reading books that must have come from Canada. And so I learned how to read the word color with a U. All the flavor, humor, color, uh, these all had U's in them when I learned to read in the books that I had around me. So when I finally went to public school in second grade, the teacher was having us spell the word color one day. I remember we were all sitting down and we were spelling the word color. And I knew that I was spelling the word right because I had already learned how to spell color. C-O-L-O-U-R. Real easy. Well, the teacher came by and she gave me a 0, crossed it out. I'll never forget the squeak and the smell of the marker and the wrong, the wrong choice, the wrong decision. I was wrong. And, but I was right. I knew I was right. And she corrected it by spelling it with no U, C-O-L-O-R. And I didn't talk to her about it because I'm not a squeaky wheel. But I thought at that point in second grade, that's about the time when I realized that the adults in my reality don't always know everything and that maybe they are wrong sometimes and won't even explain themselves and things like this. And so I'm pretty sure it was that word moment when I understood that this adult didn't know how to spell color and corrected me even when I was right without explaining herself. That I thought about later. But that I realized that I had, I was kind of more on my own, that I had to think things through for myself or I will be wrong, if I listen to what she said. Of course, later I learned that I was spelling the word in an old world way, like you would in Canada or England or Australia. And then that she was right, but I still think she's wrong. And I mean, just think about it. If you say the word color, you're saying it with an O-R when it's color, like humor. You don't say humor. It's humor, color. We've learned how to speak, so instead of learning how to speak correctly, we decided to just spell incorrectly to make, fix that problem or whatever. But that's just how syntax and life goes, I guess. It's the evolution of the written word. But I'm never going to stop spelling color the way I want to, or favorite, or humor, and nobody's going to give me a hard time about it because I know I'm right. Well, anyway, I hope you're right, and I hope you have a great day. I'm having a good time. Summer's finally here, and I love the feeling of the warm weather. So I hope you guys all get enough water. Stay cool out there for sure. And I love you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.